So, Jeevan, thank you so much for joining my podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a while that we've been chatting, and I'm so
Yes.
excited to be on your podcast.
Yeah. So I have to tell you, I heard from you on one of the other podcasts on cybersecurity, and one of the topics that you mentioned is, which is your passion and my passion, is application security and API security. So I thought I'll get you on this show so that my listeners can understand more about this world. Uh, and how to start into this world. But before we get there, why don't you introduce yourself to my audience? Give a background of what you're doing now, how you got into cybersecurity, app security, and cloud security.
A great question. So, I'm the director of product security here at Twillio. I own the application security and the cloud security teams. But my journey started in about, I think, in university, where I had one friend that was kind of mischievous and dabbled in the dark arts. So he liked to do things that people shouldn't be doing. So one day I was by his house, and he told me to come in, and I came in, and he had shown that he was cracking the university passwords, engineering passwords.
Oh,
And that terrified me. I'm like, what are you doing? Am I going to get arrested by just coming into your living room? And he had no malicious intent. He always had that hacker mindset where he wanted to do something just to see if he can do it. He wanted to do the challenges. And so that moment really it opened a completely new world to me. And I was like, okay, how do I defend myself against people like this? This individual didn't have malicious intent, but there are going to be folks that will have malicious intent. So I finished my university, I started working, and it's always been at the back of my mind about security. And then I had an opportunity at this company that made market research type of applications. Anytime they ran a pen test, I asked to be put on that particular project. The pen test would come in, there'd be a lot of vulnerabilities. I would personally fix all those vulnerabilities. And then as I started getting more responsibilities in that organization, I had one team reporting it to me. I taught them how to do it. Then had a couple teams, I taught them. And then I was like, okay, it's going to be easier for just me to teach all of engineering how to do security. So I spent a lot of lunch hours running them through labs, talking about security, what to look for, how to avoid it. And then shortly after I completed training all of them, we hired a VP of security, and he recruited me onto his team. And that was fantastic. It was really eye-opening coming from a developer side when you fix vulnerabilities to moving over to the security side and focused on really scaling and making sure that you're fixing vulnerabilities across all teams. So I helped build out the security program there, security program there. Moved to another company where, again, I started building up the security team and security program at that second company. And then I moved over to a company called Segment. And at that company, we already had an established security program. And what they really wanted me to do is come in and start thinking about how do you scale security in itself. How do we make sure that we reduce the operational workload on our security engineers? And so I sat down. One of the particular problems was that we spend way too much, proportionally too much time doing threat models. How do we reduce that burden? So came up with a strategy on teaching engineers how to do threat modeling, which worked out very well. And I learned so much through that experience where engineers are way better at threat modeling than security professionals. I'll dive more into that a little bit later. We got acquired by Twillio. I took over the product security program at Twillio, and a lot of interesting problems there as well. Twillio had hyper growth. They grew from 1,000 employees to 10,000 employees in the span of 4 or 5 years, which caused a lot of cracks in the foundation. So we rebuilt the foundation. We started adding layers on top of it, and we're at a point where we have a data-driven roadmap. So we look at the data, we analyze the data, we understand where our problems within the business, and we go look at tackling that and focusing on full classes of vulnerabilities in itself. So interesting journey from me being a software developer for a long time, finally making that switch over to security. And now on the security side, really helping companies understand how they can build a scaled program in itself.
Sure. That was great. Now, Twillio, if I understand correctly, the main business is communication, right? So, example, there's a business, let's say a pizza delivery shop. They want to send an outbound communication to their customers. Hey, your pizza is arriving in 30 minutes. Get ready, get on the door, etc. So Twilio is involved in all that communication across channels, right? So, okay, so that means digital first business and tons of API.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't want to delve into that, but we'll come to that. I want to start with basics of application security. What is it? Why do I need to do it?
People sometimes don't ask that question and make a lot of assumptions. So application security, let me go back a little bit and talk about the importance. So we're starting to see a lot of governments getting involved with security and saying, your company's security has to be at minimum this. And it's important because a lot of user data is out there and it's at risk. So if you're not properly securing your customer data or your customers' users' data, you're really putting their businesses at risk as well. So the pizza example is a good one, where you want to maybe send a text, SMS to the individual, letting them know to pick up the pizza. But there's a lot of information as a part of it. One is the name of the individual, where they're going to be located in the next 30 minutes. All these sort of things are very sensitive for the right people. So you want to make sure that you are storing information safely and securely, and that people don't have to freak out about where their data is. So application security is super important. And some of the ways that we do this is that there's a multitude of ways. And Microsoft did a fantastic job in the early 2000s when they came out with the SDL, the Security Development Lifecycle. So they talked about what development is and the various stages of development, and talking about the security items that need to be done in those items. So you have training. You want to have security training, make sure that people are doing the right things there. You have the requirements phase. You want to make sure that you are doing security review on the requirements. So that pizza shop, maybe you want to make sure that you're sending the information to a secure company, or you want to make sure that the way that you present the information is secure as well. So the requirements phase will work closely with product managers, make sure that we're thinking about security as part of that. Then you go to the design phase, where people will take the requirements, convert it into actual design document. And as a security engineer, this is the most important part. We will actually threat model and dive deeper into what the potential problems are when it comes to security. And threat modeling is important. Security reviews and threat modeling are important because it's the cheapest way to fix vulnerabilities. Like once you're just doing the
hold on for a minute. What is threat modeling? Okay.
Threat modeling is basically you review the feature that's being put out, you dive deeper into it, and understand the potential risks and threats to that particular feature. So we want to make sure that we understand how a malicious actor can potentially take advantage of that particular system. So maybe we create this pizza feature, and there's a way for this threat actor to get free pizza. So we want to make sure, how do we prevent someone to be able to do that? So that's what threat modeling is. It's important to do it while you're in the design phase, because imagine you already pushed it to production, someone found a hole, told a bunch of other people, now we have 10,000 pizzas that went that no one paid for. So then you have to re-architect the solution. So threat modeling in the design phase. Then you go into implementation phase, where developers are actually writing code. This is a great place for security tooling like SAST, source code analysis, SCA, software composition analysis, where you can look for vulnerabilities as a part of it. And then you have Once that's done, you push it to a pre-production environment. You could potentially run DAST, a dynamic analysis on that, see if there are any other vulnerabilities there. And then you finally push it to production, where you can have a pen test, a bug bounty program, a lot of different things that can test things there. So application security is making sure that you're putting security functionality at all of those different layers. And the more different type of security tools, requirements that you have, will have sort of like the Swiss cheese model of security, where if one layer catches it, doesn't catch it, it's potentially caught in different layers. It gets harder and harder and harder for an adversary to be able to get to that sensitive data that you have there.
So that sounds like defense in depth from
That's exactly the same. It's
traditional
Swiss cheese, defensive depth, they're the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember my CSSP. So right. So what I've been realizing, reading more about application security, because I don't come from an application development background just like you, but I come from infra security, SOC, that kind of background. So I've been trying to read about it. Now, the more I read about application security, I realize that there's so many layers. You can just categorize them into build, deploy, and run, securing all these 3 layers. But the number of options and tools and manual stuff, that's just too much. It sounds too complicated, right? So today, if I have to start learning about application security, where do I begin?
Yeah, I think the best place to actually start is there's 2 flavors. One is offensive, one is defensive.
Okay.
And I'm mostly on the defensive side. And when the best place to actually start is actually, how do you do software development? So a lot of folks that have an application security background have a software development background. And that greatly helps, because when you're on the security side, you have to be able to speak the language to the developers. You have to provide solutions to the developers. So having a really strong foundation in software development will help you have a strong foundation in application security. And then the second thing is that if you're at a company that does have a security team, become a security champion. Work closely with them, understand the security requirements, and be the voice for the security team on your team or your sibling teams as well. So the other teams that are close to you. So being a security champion will really help you understand what are the requirements that are coming from the security team and making sure that your teams adhere to that. So another easy way to get into there. And then I always highly recommend folks go to security conferences themselves and understand what are the problems that people are trying to find. That's how I got my foothold into meetups and conferences. So OWASP is a great resource, Open Web Application Security Project. I'm a OWASP chapter lead in Vancouver in Canada. And it's a great place to meet individuals, understand the current type of security challenges and solutions to those challenges. So go to the meetups, go to the conferences. Security folks are the most open people in any industry. So I went in not knowing security at all, came into a conference, didn't know what I was doing, and someone clearly noticed that I was completely lost. So he came over, started talking to me. He's like, "Are you new? Is this first security conference?" And I was like, "Yep." He's like, "Okay, stick around with me." For the next couple of hours, he walked me through all of the various places in the security conferences, talked to me about the different security things that I can learn. It was welcoming me with open arms. It was such a great feeling, which now I do for others when I notice that at conferences.
So one of the things I've been doing, and I often get to attend RSA conference, been doing this for a long time, is I notice the category of companies that show up. So this year at RSA, there were 84 or 86 AppSec companies.
Wow.
That sounds like a lot. The second category, which had that kind of number, was the managed detection and response, essentially threat detection and response side. Okay. The growing category I saw was the AI category, but we will come to that. And the IAM and the standard infra security companies, they've been there. But the growth in AppSec that I've seen is just massive. Why do you think that's happening? I mean, I've never seen AppSec coming, or so many people talking about AppSec.
that actually was the reason how I got sold about application security. So my VP of security, the one that pulled me into security, he's like, Jeevan, you're at the very beginning of the wave of application security. He talked
Mm,
about in the 70s, it was a lot about physical security. In the 90s, it was a lot about network security. The internet was coming along. And he's like, Jeevan, if you join security now, you're going to be in that wave of application security.
mm, mm,
And it is there because there's a need for it.
yeah.
There weren't API security companies before, or
Mm,
our DAS were very immature. As software world evolved from doing page server type of client server type of
mm,
communications, where you click a button, the whole page refreshes,
mm,
moving over to a single page application where like Gmail and all that look like right now. DAS tools stopped working. So
yeah.
all these traditional companies, they couldn't keep up with the pace of technology.
Mm,
And you have a lot of new players that understand the modern problems and have modern solutions for those modern problems as well.
mm,
But there was also a lack of application security, just tooling in the past as well. There was only 4 or 5 major companies that had a bunch of different tools.
mm,
And while some of the tools worked okay, it didn't really work well with our development experiences. They're really clumsy and cumbersome. So you're
mm,
seeing that the development community has been sort of crying and wanting tools that work way better with them, have a great developer experience, integrate in their work style. And you're seeing a lot of companies that are able to do that now as well.
mm,
So a
mm.
lot of different reasons for a lot of different companies coming out. The tools are so much better now than they were before. And philosophically, they're all pushing left. And
Yeah.
when we talk about pushing left, we're talking about finding things in the development phase or design phase as well. So earlier on, while developers are just getting started, it really makes things a lot better that way. So you see a lot of tools targeting that area as well.
Mm, mm. See, so going back to that comparison of what you did on traditional versus modern, let's say cloud native friendly tools, right? the
Yeah.
the modern tools today understand a microservice. They understand that I'm running in a container, I'm reading data that's flowing out of container, they are API friendly and all that, right? Now, the thing that I've also noticed is that a lot of people are familiar with WAF. Okay, do you think WAF will evolve, or has it already evolved to solve the modern API heavy, cloud native kind of architectures of application, or this market needs a complete overhaul? Okay.
Uh, yeah, no, I've seen quite a few different styles of WAF as well. You have the traditional WAF where it's
Mhm.
just a firewall and you have your
Yeah.
rules and it's very simplistic that way. But I've actually seen WAFs that actually run on the application itself and integrate right into the application. So when you
Mm,
boot up the application, it's right there with that application itself, and it's analyzing the request coming in and it's able to understand or think about, is it malicious or not. And then you have different tools like RASP
mm,
that are there as well that
yeah.
sort of work in that behavior. So you're seeing a slight evolution within that
Mm,
WAF space as well. And beyond WAF, there are so many evolution of tools across the board where we're we're getting deeper into the application, we're getting deeper into the IDE for
mm,
developers, we're getting deeper into the technology stack. So we're getting deeper, we're getting more and more information, and we
mm,
can leverage that information to better understand what is happening out there. So
yeah.
but things can potentially go wrong. I remember
Yeah.
using that next generation type of WAF at a company, and it was running great, and then all of a sudden the CPU would peg at 100%. And
Oh.
so we'd auto scale. We go, okay, we'll have, instead of running 5, let's run 10 of these machines, 100% across every single one of them.
Mm, mm,
And I worked really closely with that team. We worked in pre-production, and like we couldn't replicate the problem. We thought we replicated it, so they deployed some fixes. And it was until we had to simulate production traffic in our pre-production environment, they
mm,
finally discovered it. So There are challenges with next generation WAFs out there, that you'll have to work really closely with the vendor to make sure that you're keeping an eye on it and making sure it's running the way that you expect it to run.
Yeah. See, other topic that that really interests me. Essentially, there are two topics. One is the first topic, which most people don't talk about, is the security of your entire DevOps pipeline, right? The tools that are automating the entire process, is it really securely configured or not? Okay.
Yeah.
The second one is, I see a lot of potential of getting data from the right, which is APM tools. Okay. Observability coming from the APM platforms to the security platforms. It's too exciting. I don't know if there's a product that somebody can make. Maybe it's a startup idea, but I think the potential to mix left and right is just amazing. Okay. Will we get there? Hopefully someday in a short future. But what do you think about those two things?
Yeah, we'll start with APM. I feel that there are already companies out there, and the tooling type would be called IAST, Interactive Analysis Security Tooling.
Okay.
And I've leveraged that many years ago. The tooling wasn't there yet. This was mid 2010s when I was leveraging. I'm sure it's gotten way more mature at that point, but it blew my mind because it is able to, like you said, it's observability. You can go all through your entire stack and see where potentially malicious activity can occur. So going through and installing it into our systems, we had a much deeper understanding of the tool itself and how our application works and where the gaps potentially can be. It doesn't necessarily mean that there are gaps, but the tool provided potential where the gaps are. And it really helped us very quickly level up our security program at that particular company. So being able to, the observability, I'm a huge fan of APMs just in general. So yeah, having that level of understanding and seeing where the potential gaps are, it was great. We never ran that tooling in production because our production systems have to be very fast. But you have to exercise the actual application in order to find out the potential malicious paths. So what we used to do it in our pre-production environment, and we run all of our tests against it. And that some of our tests, like just exercising the test, it would say, hey, you didn't actually do data sanitization on this particular input. You might be able to do a SQL injection attack on this. If even though you're not doing it in production and getting all the different variants on using your application, you could do it in pre-production and run your suite of tests, and that's good enough for it to get the data that you need. So super exciting stuff on the APM, RASP, IAST sort of space, then sort of next generation tooling there.
Yeah. And also about the security of the DevOps tools themselves. Do you think that's a tough topic that's often get discussed, or people just ignore it? It's left to default config.
Yeah, that one's a harder conversation. So, and some of these tools, CI/CD tools, you hear about these RCEs, these very critical vulnerabilities that happen. There's actually one company out there that is sort of pivoting into that space. So they have a SCA product, software composition analysis, where they what they do is they dive deeper and validate it's not a false positive. They say the reachability of this particular vulnerability is true, so you should fix this one. And most people with SCA, they also have a SaaS product. They went the other way. We're going to do a SaaS SCA, and we're going to do CI/CD. We're going to make sure that you have it secure by default configuration for it. So there's a company called Endor Labs based in San Francisco. Very interesting product there. So I know at least one company in that space. But traditionally in the past, what I've done is I've hired specialized security researchers, brought them in, had them look at the CI/CD and say, hey, how can you, as a developer or as a malicious insider, how can you inject malicious code in here and get it to go to production, maybe open a backdoor in production. So I've done it manually before. I'm hoping whenever I do get to review the vendor Endor Labs solution, it would be providing same sort of data in itself.
Okay, that's a great input. Now, Although I've been reading about more companies that are doing that, but that's a topic for different day. Now, I want to understand. Let's say there's a digital first company like yours.
Yeah.
How do they start with AppSec? I'm sure well, code scanning, SaaS are basic hygiene today because of the
Yeah.
awareness in cybersecurity. Threat modeling, I'm sure, is a different ball game, right?
Yeah.
You need smart people to come up with all possible scenarios. Can this be done at scale? Is it manual? How does a digital first company that can have millions of transactions happening, I'm based out of India, we have tons of applications with millions of users, and I'm sure a lot of them are seeing those traffic. We have 10-minute delivery apps in India now, right? We get our groceries in
Wow.
10 minutes. Yes. Okay. Now,
That's
I'm
way
sure they
faster than Canada.
yeah. So how does someone build AppSec at that layer, and also API sec? Okay, if you want to cover both of them together, that would be great. Do you think they're related? I mean, I'm curious on that front also.
Yeah. So with a lot of difficulties. Even the basics at
Mhm.
large companies are difficult because these companies got large by acquisitions or like partnerships.
Yes.
So you would have a lot of areas that were just the default Twilio, or sometimes we call it Twilio Classic, where everything is homogeneous. It's all built on the same stack, same wave. So if you focus your energy on what we call the paved path, the route that 90% of the developers take, it's easy. You just
Mm.
focus on that. 90% of your security is already happening there. But now you have 10, 15, 20 different companies that you acquired. How do you actually make sure
Mm.
that you've scaled it correctly across that? And that's the challenge that I put in front of my the application security teams. I tell them, okay, I want to see, so for the basic hygiene stuff, I want to be able to see what percentage coverage do we have across the ecosystem,
Mm.
and make it a metric. And I want to push that metric closer to 100%. So SCA is a great example where we had our tool. We didn't even know how integrated it was. We didn't even know how many GitHub organizations that we had. So
Oh, okay.
um, yeah, as part of that process, we learned that we had over 160 GitHub organizations.
Wow.
I don't know how many tens of thousands of repos, maybe even close to 100,000 repos that we had. So providing solutions across all that is not going to be easy. So we
Yeah.
started
Mm.
integrating SCA across all that. Our percentage kept on going up, 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 up. And when we got to 100%, I'm like, okay, now that we got strong coverage, we have that visibility. What are the problems that we're seeing? And we see all these critical vulnerabilities all over the place. So working closely with engineering leadership at that, working with them to make sure that we're slowly burning those critical vulnerabilities down. So doing security at scale of companies, it's a lot slower paced because you want to be very strategic on how you do it. You have to
Yeah.
build internal partnerships within engineering and security to make
Mm.
sure that you're able to roll out your programs successfully. And you want to always think about scale, because I don't want to manually, if we saw a certain number, say 500 critical vulnerabilities, we don't want to manually create 500 tickets. You have to actually
Yes.
automate that process. And you
Mm.
also want to automate the process for when they fixed it to auto close it as well. So you want to really think about, okay, what are the every single step that we're going to take as a part of this process? Where are the places that it might be operational burdensome for the team? How do we slowly add automation to remove that burden from our team as well as engineering as well? So the
Mm.
next step after that would be working closely with our engineering teams and say, hey, I don't want you to worry about these SCA type of vulnerabilities. Let's auto patch them. We're definitely not there. We're not as confident with our testing capabilities, but we always want to keep going, iterating on it slowly, 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 till we get to a place where engineers don't have to worry about it, security doesn't have to worry. Automatically, the systems are auto-patched themselves.
Oh, that sounds complicated and
It's very
slow.
complicated.
Yes. Anyways, API sec, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you interact more with APIs than a lot of typical other companies, right? Because of the nature of your business, right? Are you seeing more attacks coming through APIs? Have you seen any change in trend, with AI
Yeah.
led, right? There is talk of dark GPT and easily automated tools that can, you know, easily attack our systems. So what's your take on API security?
Yeah, it is hard. It is really hard. So the good thing that we have is we have a bug bounty program, and we
Okay.
run regular penetration tests on our APIs as well, where our bug bounty program, our researchers based throughout the entire world, we provide them scope and say, hey, hit these ones. And then we also let them know if you hit certain areas, we'll give you more bounties as well. So we get a good coverage with our API with through that bug bounty. There are a lot of tools out there in the marketplace that help with API security as well. They're very capable tools, but it is hard because sometimes you can't tell what's malicious and what's actual good traffic. So
Yes. Mm.
yeah, our bug bounty researchers, some of them are really, really good and provide us a lot of the challenges. One are part of the OWASP top 10. Broken access controls is a very common type of vulnerability. So we get a lot of findings through our bug bounty through that. And the sophistication on the attacks have grown considerably since I've actually started in the industry. So I've seen that certain companies DDoS attacks happening through the APIs, DDoS, and then even DOS attacks. So what's a DOS? Denial of service. DDoS is a distributed denial of service. So distributed denial of service, you're just overwhelming the servers that are
Yeah.
receiving these requests. But there's an AppDoS, application denial of service. And what that is that what smart researchers or smart malicious individuals, they hit one API and see how much, if they hit it, will it cause a CPU spike on the other side? So a great
Whoa.
example of, yeah, is exports or reporting. They're very timely and resource hungry type of actions. So you see researchers gently touch that. And I've seen companies where if you hit it 2, 3 times in a row, you can just completely lock that server. So that's a denial of service because no one else can actually get actions being done at that point. So I've seen definitely malicious activity as well as researchers, good researchers letting us know about it. We work really closely with them to better
Mm.
understand how we can implement those APIs in a way that is sustainable.
Mm. Okay. Now, this is very interesting. App-based DOS. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. Okay, because maybe I don't come from your side of the world, so maybe that's why I'm hearing it for the first time. But also, I think if would you recommend any digital first company to have a bug bounty program in as part of their overall strategy?
Yeah, so I first started Bug Bounty in 2015. And
Okay.
the reason we started is we had a pen testing vendor that did a test and we weren't satisfied with the results. Actually, we were pretty unhappy with it. They said they found 0 vulnerabilities, and we're like, impossible. Yeah, exactly. That's the reaction we had. They found 0 vulnerabilities. So we're pretty upset with them. They did a retest. They found 35 afterwards because we had to
Mm.
yell at them. But that left a bad taste in our mouth, and bug bounties was just getting big at that time.
Mm.
So
Mm.
we went down the bug bounty. We went a private bug bounty route at that particular company, and it was fantastic because at a pen testing company, you run a small assessment, and there's maybe 1, 2 people that are actually doing the assessment. Maybe they're really strong at XSS or a particular type of class of vulnerabilities. So they focus mostly on that. But with a bug bounty, you have the crowd. There's a lot of different researchers. They have different skills. They have different capabilities. So you get a much more holistic look at your application to see if you're finding vulnerabilities. My preference has always been public bug bounties where anyone can create an account. They can look at it, try hitting the systems up and just finding any sort of vulnerabilities. And I've had really, really great results with that. But you also have to treat your security researchers with respect, because they're spending a lot of effort looking for vulnerabilities in your system. So you have to triage them very quickly. You have to provide them very fair compensation. And you want to make
Yes.
sure that you actually fix the vulnerabilities. They
Yes.
didn't go through all of those effort
Mhm.
for you to not do anything with it. What was the point of doing anything
Yeah.
for it? So we want to make sure that you're respecting them. You have build a strong community that way. So
Mm.
huge proponent. I'd rather have someone tell me that this is what's broken on my system rather than finding out afterwards because there was some malicious activity there.
Mm. Wow. That was amazing. The last thing I want to know for today is what's your view on this generative AI? Do you think AI will have some impact on AppSec?
Yeah,
What's
I
your view
really
on
think
that?
so.
Yeah.
I'm quite excited about it. So on the defensive side of things, Microsoft put out a really good list of things to do as part of your threat model. So
Mhm.
these are the type of questions that you want to put out. OWASP has put out a top 10 project for LLM as
Yes.
well.
Mhm.
So you want to make sure that so on the defensive end, you want to make sure that you're continuously taking these inputs, making sure that you're doing things well there. But on the flip side, I can see security researchers leveraging generative AI to move faster with their threat models as well. So
Mm. Mm.
maybe you're asking it questions, say, okay, my system is set up this particular way. What are some of the concerns that I might have? So we do a lot of things in a day, and we might not be considering, say, if you had to, as part of whatever threat model you're doing, a non-AI
Mm.
feature, there might be 20 things that you should be thinking about, and you only remember 10 or 12 because you
Yes.
have a lot of other things in your
Mhm.
mind. Sort of like that bug bounty versus a pen test, because you're really good at these 10 things, but you're not considering the other 10 that you should be thinking about. So using a generative AI as a tool to help you be able to do your job better would be one first step.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of other different applications.
Mm. Mm.
AI is here to stay.
Yeah.
It's going to definitely, there's a long way for AI to go. Sometimes the questions or the answers that they provide you, you are like, okay, my child could have answered it a little bit better than that.
Yeah.
But it will get better and better. It's going to definitely help us a lot more
Yeah.
in general. So I'm excited about the new future.
Yeah. Especially, I think with you've mentioned data so many times. I think there's so much vulnerability data, but prioritization of that vulnerability data, contextualizing it with application, the user data, AI can plug all that together, right?
Uh,
Theoretically, it sounds very sexy to me. Okay, let's
Yeah.
hope somebody builds a model on that, right? So, or somebody's
I'm
already,
sure they're working on it already. I'm
yeah,
positive that they are. Yeah.
yeah. So, Jeevan, that was it for today. Thank you so much for spending time on my podcast. I'm sure we'll get together soon.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for inviting me. It was a great opportunity. Always tell folks, don't be afraid to reach out. The security community is quite open. We're more than willing to help folks just in general. So if there's something that caught your attention, you want a little bit more information on, hit me up on LinkedIn. I don't mind providing information. Take me a couple of days to get to you, but I will definitely get back to you and provide you more thoughts.
Thank you.